That's great. We're live, Chairman.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 9th virtual meeting of the Parish Council. I think we're getting a bit slicker as we do it each time. Tonight's meeting we're holding in Zoom, and it's being live streamed also to the Parish Council's YouTube channel, where you're able to...
We're live, Chairman. Thank you.
My name's Helen Douglas, and I chair the Parish Council. Could I ask if anybody is still got their microphones on, if they could turn it off, please, because we're getting terrible feedback.
Parish Council's YouTube channel, where you're able to...
We're live, Chairman.
Thank you. My name's Helen Douglas, and I chair the Parish Council. Could I ask if anybody is still...
So I'll start this meeting by undertaking a general roll call for our attendance register, and that's so that everybody knows who is here. So do we have Councillor Anderson?
Yes, Chairman, we do.
Councillor Barrett? Councillor Bird?
Yes, he's present.
Caudry?
Present.
Councillor Forfar? Councillor Higby?
Yes, Chair.
Councillor McGuinness? Councillor Marsh?
Present.
Councillor Mignott?
Yes.
Councillor Scott? Councillor Speary? Councillor Tennant?
Present, Chair.
And Councillor Warrilow.
Yep, here.
Are there any apologies this evening, Mel?
None, Chairman.
That's Mel Stevens, and she's our clerk. We're also joined this evening by our Deputy Clerk, Linda Greenslade, Joe Carhill, our Finance Officer, and Martin, who's our Operations Manager. I understand that we have 2 residents who want to speak under the public participation part of this meeting, Mel, in reference to the One Horton Heath application. Is there anybody else that has notified you that wishes to speak this evening?
None, Chairman.
Thank you. Well, I quite like these meetings to flow nicely, and although we should have public participation now, it seems to be rather more sensible to have it just before we talk about the planning applications. So with the Council's permission, I'm going to start the meeting with item 1 and 2, and we will then move to public participation directly before we discuss the One Horton Heath applications. Nobody's telling me I can't do that. So item 1 then, minutes of the last meetings that we've had, the 18th of January 2021. Was that a correct record of what we said, please? Thank you, Councillor Speary, seconded by Councillor Scott. All in favour, please. Thank you very much, that's clearly carried. And the minutes of the asset meeting that were on the 12th of January 21, are they a correct record? Proposed by Councillor Speary, seconded by, thank you, Councillor Anderson. All in favour? And that's clearly carried. And finally, just noting the planning comments that we made week ending 29th of January. Is there anything anyone wants to say about those planning minutes? So item 2 then, we move to declarations of interest. And if you're not a usual watcher of our Parish Council, anyone who has an interest, whether that's financial interest or any other interest in anything we're going to discuss, has to declare it. Mel, are there any interests to declare this evening, please?
Yes, there are a number of councillors that do have interest to raise. We've got councillors Caudry, Marsh, Tennant and Warrilow that have interest. So I didn't know if you wanted to go through them one by one. So they
yes, we will, please. Thank you. So Councillor Caudry, your interest is?
Good evening. I have not a personal interest, but as I'm a borough councillor, and the borough councillors will eventually be part of the group that's making the decision about the One Horton Heath application, there is a potential, I don't think it's really an interest, but there is something that ought to be brought to the attention of the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Marsh?
Mine is exactly the same as Councillor Caudry. Because I'm a borough councillor and I will be sitting on the committee making the final decision, I can't participate in the discussion, as I can't show any predetermination about what my final decision will be. So I will not be participating.
Thank you. Councillor Tennant?
My situation is the same as Councillor Caudry and Councillor Marsh. I'll be sitting on the planning committee, so I can't be seen to be predetermining the decisions that we will be making then. So I won't be participating in item 3.
Thank you. Councillor Warrilow.
The company that I work for will be submitting a tender for the supply of building materials to the development, so I won't be participating.
Thank you very much. Now, Councillor Warrilow therefore has a financial interest in this, and she will now leave this meeting and will rejoin us for item 4. The other councillors don't have a pecuniary interest and therefore are able to listen to what is said but won't participate in this, and certainly won't take part in any votes if we need to have any. So, as you might expect, the One Horton issue is something that we've been involved with from just about day one. I and the clerk and other members of the Parish Council have attended the One Horton meetings. We've had lots of input, we've had lots of consultation with officers from Eastleigh Borough Council and also from the One Horton development. And we feel that of all the applications that we've ever had to deal with, this is one where we have actually been listened to and have played quite a part in it, which is rather nice. It is a very controversial and very large scale development, and it will undoubtedly have huge impact on this parish and of course the parish of West End. A lot of this development is in West End, and we mustn't lose sight of that. And members of this council and residents have had some very, very strong feelings about it. I can go right back to the first consultation meetings that the Parish Council held at Horton Heath Community Association, where feelings certainly did run high. Lots of things were said, lots of comments were made, and things started to take shape from that matter. The Parish Council's in the past raised its objections to all sorts of planning schemes and large-scale planning, particularly just recently to the local plan, which largely affected this parish alone. And in the early stages of this development, the Parish Council had those same worries and those same issues about the loss of our green space and our countryside. Way back, the Parish Council decided that if it was proved that this housing was required, the Parish Council would not object. It would reserve its judgment on it and cooperate fully with any planning that went on, in order that should the housing happen, we were fully involved from the very start of it. And I think that has been a very positive thing for us to do, because we have been able to have influence over this development. There are, however, still lots of outstanding issues that need raising and need to be sorted before we're completely confident that this development is going to meet the needs of new residents and, probably more importantly, existing residents in this area. Things like traffic, for example. And I know that we're going to have some input from our members of the public about that shortly. The Parish Council has met on many occasions and discussed the One Horton issue. There's been regular feedback from myself and the clerk to the Parish Council. And more recently, we held a seminar, not a public meeting, but a seminar of all of the parish councillors and our officers to talk about this development and to explore things in more detail. And from that, we developed a list of questions that we wanted answered from the Borough Council. And we have the answers to some of those questions this evening. And I will go through those in a moment before our members of the public talk, because it may well be that some of these questions are already answered. Plainly, none of us really want to have any of this housing. We would prefer to look at green fields, but the principle of this development is already decided. This is the second application. There is already one that has outstanding planning permission for these fields. So that is not something that we can discuss this evening. The other thing that we can't really discuss is the provision of doctor surgeries and healthcare. Yes, it's really crucial to us, but the Parish Council, nor the Borough Council, nor Hampshire County Council has any influence whatsoever over that. It's all done on numbers and occupancy and on what doctors need and require and will do. So it is nothing that we can do. So although you can raise the fact that there might not be capacity at Stokewood, that's as far as that conversation is going to go with the Parish Council. We're also just a consultee. We do not make the decisions about this. We can pass on residents' worries if it's something that we agree with. We can put forward our own worries and our own concerns, and I'd like to think that we are listened to very carefully, but we do not make the decision on this development. So I think with all of that background, I will now just move on to some of the questions that the Parish Council has asked. Now, on some of the answers that we've had, we have to believe what the professionals are telling us. We might raise our eyebrows about drainage and all the rest of it and the flooding risk, but there are reports which assure us from professional people that that will be taken care of by the SUD schemes and the other schemes that there are. And we don't have the expertise to do anything but to question it and ask for further evidence. So we're not professionals in that field at all. We have to rely on the evidence that we've been given. So some of the questions that we asked, one was, what on earth is sculptural massing? Well, sculptural massing, in case you don't know, and we certainly didn't, is buildings that aren't just straight boxes. They've got a bit of interest in them. So they've got different roof lines, they've got different frontages. They are sort of feature buildings that might be on the end of a row or might be midway in a terrace to add some interest to it. So that's what sculptural massing is. We asked about land uses, particularly land use in the village centre, and we asked what class of development might be permitted in there. And we've been given an answer that says it's mixed development, it might be takeaways, it might be shops, it's community use, it's drop-in centres. So it's a very wide-ranging use that can be in there. We asked about enhancements to the footpaths that are already around the area, and we've had reassurance that those will be enhanced. Some of them will be made into 24/7 pathways. In other words, there'll be some lighting, they may be tarmac, they'll be suitable for people in wheelchairs, people with difficulty walking, and people with pushchairs as well. And we've asked about junction improvements as well and the traffic, and there are some plans for junction improvements between here and Eastleigh. No one is saying that the traffic difficulties are going to go away, but they are saying that they might be eased. So finally, our MP, Mr. Holmes, raised a question about this development in questions to the Housing Minister this afternoon in Parliament. And I'm very grateful to Colin Bird, who alerted us to this and has also sent us a recording of the 1 minute or so that he managed to have asking his question. And he wanted to know that, he wanted to ask if there were any plans to improve or change the way that local councils who are operating as the developer and also the people who are giving planning permission are going to be monitored. And the answer from the Housing Minister was, yes, he was very aware of what's happening in Horton Heath. No, he couldn't comment on it personally because he's not allowed to do that. But he said that local councils must be particularly vigilant that when they are dealing with situations like this, they must appear to take note of absolutely everybody who objects or makes comments or makes suggestions, whether that's somebody in the street or whether it's the MP. And that I think pretty much sums up what the answer was that he gave. So it didn't really make a lot of progress on that one. So I'm going to hand over now to Mr. Morgan Egbert. Now, he represents Barley Fields, which is a road off Burnet's Lane. They have decided to form a subgroup, I think, from Burnet's Lane Residents Association. There are 8 homes in there, and they are particularly worried because they are the homes that are most affected by building coming up towards their boundary. And although it's been appreciated that their boundary is a significant one, they are not appeased by any plans. In fact, there don't appear to be any detailed plans for that. I know that they're meeting with the One Horton team. I know that they've met with David today, so they may have had some of their fears put to one side, but they've got some particular things about their visual amenities, about privacy, about limiting the size of houses that are by them, and a green buffer. So, Mr. Egbert, over to you, please.
Thanks, Helen. Right, I'll just start by introducing everyone to Barley Fields. If from a locational point of view in Horton Heath, we're the first set of houses, if you're heading north along Burnet's Lane, that you reach from when you go past the entrance to Alton's Farm. So there are 4 houses that have back gardens that go with views directly south across the fields at Alton's, and then there are 4 houses that face west. And at the moment, all 8 houses have literally blank views across the fields. We did have a meeting with David Cramner earlier at 5 o'clock, which we were hoping was actually going to make us feel better, but the meeting has actually made all of us feel worse with the approach that they're taking. So we initially were hoping to discuss having some form of buffer zone or open space between our houses and the new houses that they're planning to build. And it was made pretty clear to us that this just wasn't going to be in the council's plans. And they really pushed home the point that from a planning principle, they don't have to offer us any sort of zone at all. And that as long as they met minimum planning criteria for the space requirements between our houses and the new developments, there wouldn't really be a lot we could do. So that was disappointing to get that from him. The only sort of positive that we could draw from it was that with the design and some of the orientation of the houses, they were willing to listen to us and what we could put forward. From 3 options that they gave us, pretty much which option would be the most favourable. So just to give you a bit more background from our point of view, I will speak specifically for Barley Fields and not too much on the wider development. We are all involved with the Burnet's Lane Residents Association, and we do support them as well, but we have set up our own group just to really put forward our own concerns and be quite specific about our properties. So looking at the development as a whole, we appear to be the only 9 houses, or I think 8 houses, sorry, that are directly share a boundary with the new development. So for a development of 2,500 houses, it does seem well, from our point of view, we are the only 8 houses that are directly affected. So there is a very small number of us, and we do feel on that basis that we should get some sort of concession where the site is so big and we are a relatively small patch of land around that. When they built Barley Fields, one of the concessions that the builders got when they put the houses together was that we've all got 4/5 bed houses. They're all quite big, but they have relatively small gardens. And that was on the basis that we would all have a view over the fields. Now, we all understand that from a planning point of view, you've got no right to have a view. So we're not arguing on that case. But we do want a sympathetic outcome to it, based on the fact that we do have that in place at the moment. We also have an elevation above the fields, and we were all the houses were built with balconies. Again, this was for the fact that you've got a small garden, but you have the benefit of the view. Just one of the things we found from an excerpt from the LVIA was, I'll just read the excerpt. The Landscape and Visual Impact Assessment by Tyler Grange, December 20, proposes options to mitigate impact on the residential edge of Horton Heath. Set developments back from the edge of Horton Heath, beyond areas of open space and landscape. Transition zones, planting to provide setting to a conservation area, avoid coalescence and respect amenity of residents. Mitigating along Burnet's Lane is also proposed and includes additional tree planting to provide soft edge and transition between existing proposed development edge. Lower density development and consideration along the southern edge of Burnet's Lane, where residential properties are more sparsely scattered and located. Paragraph 5.46 states, having identified the extent of visibility, composition of views and representative photo viewpoints, these groups of people, visual receptors who may have potential to have their views and visual amenity affected by the proposed development have been identified. These include residents overlooking the eastern edge of the site, i.e. Burnet's Lane, but they did not identify at this stage Barley Fields. The impact on Barley Fields must be considered to be at least equal, or if not greater, in this case, than the visual sensitivity in relation to OPA phase 1 and wider OPA would be assessed as value high, susceptibility high and overall sensitivity high, and a recommendation to be taken forward into assessment. This has not been done owing to the oversight of not including Barley Fields as a visual receptor. Had this been completed, the mitigation outcomes would be similar, namely the new development edge should be softened with a green transition and landscape corridor between the existing and new development. So having read that, we all feel that they've taken a wide view of the whole site, but then our little corner hasn't actually had those principles applied to it when it comes to planning the housing. So before we met with David Cramner earlier, we were more on the sort of side of hoping we could work with them to an outcome we'd be happy with. But I do feel now, and we did have a very short meeting after amongst the residents, that we do feel we want to object to the approach that they're making towards us in our corner of the development. Other points we'd like to raise is just the consideration for the flood risk. At the end of our development, we have a ditch running around the whole site at Barley Fields, which is because of the amount of water that drains off the site. Building heights is another item that we'd like to clarify, especially the buildings nearest us. At 2.5 stories, we feel that should be the maximum height of anything that backs onto us. And in conclusion, we're hoping to achieve a green zone or a space around our properties. It's very difficult to gauge how big that should be, but we do feel it should be in keeping with what's already there. So we just wanted to find out from Fair Oak Council whether or not this would be something that you could put forward in your submission about our particular situation.
Thank you very much indeed for that. We're not going to discuss that right this second. We've got Mr. Hubbard who's going to talk next, and then we will talk about it. Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. Mr. Hubbard, you're on mute. If you could.
Yes, I'm on mute, no longer there. Good evening, everybody. I've sent an email to Melanie, and I understand all the council members have received a copy. So I'm really not going to drone on about it. There's just 2 things or 3 things I'd like to highlight. The first is that the concerns raised by the residents, I think you'll be aware of this, to the council, which I think David McNaughton wrote before Christmas, bullet pointing all the concerns, have not been answered, despite a reminder. So that's something which is somewhat alarming, to say the least, that these matters have not been addressed. There are 2 things you should know. There's a drainage meeting on the 1st of March with the council. So we're hopeful that something positive will come out of that. And then, just a matter of interest, the residents are meeting with Mr. Holmes later this month. I think, as you know, he's opposing the application. That unlikely that he's going to succeed in this, but he's certainly been anti, I think, all the way through. But the residents just wanted to express their concerns to him as their MP. The other thing I wanted to raise is the plans to build a landmark at the roundabout of Burnet's Lane. The 6-storey, it's now being dubbed HM Prison Chalcroft Farm. It's an absolute monstrosity, and people are up in arms at the moment. And this seems to have just appeared at the last meeting without any warning whatsoever. They consider it's important that there's a landmark as such, and nobody thinks that's the reason behind it. It's thought that they're just trying to pack in as many units as they can, to be perfectly frank. It's not in keeping with the rural surroundings. It's 6 stories. Residents across the road from that have had trouble getting planning permission to extend their houses above the gable height. So that's a complete contradiction on part of the council. So that's a worrying aspect. And I don't know how that possibly fits in with the rural surroundings. It is, as I said, I think a monstrosity.
Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. Have you put yourself on mute, or have you finished?
To put myself on mute. I was just going to mention that I was driving in Christchurch recently and came across a big estate, and they had a statement point or landmark, and it was just a construction with the name of the estate, and it was aesthetically quite pleasing to the eye. So I really don't understand, and I'm sure the council members may not understand, why a 6-storey block of flats has to be sited at the entrance of the estate at the roundabout at Burnet's Lane. The only other matter I wanted to raise was in relation to the roundabout. We were always assured from the outset that Burnet's Lane south of the bridge would be closed to traffic. Some of the plans show the roundabout open. And if that is the case, then it's a complete rat run all the way from the top of Burnet's Lane into West End. And I have a feeling that perhaps your friends in West End Parish Council may wish to know or have the heads up in that direction. It's not been clarified yet, but a number of the plans show it open. But we've been reassured time and time again it was going to be closed to traffic. Other than those points, nothing else to say.
Thank you very much. I should say for people who are listening that the David who's being referred to is David Cramner, and he's leading the One Horton team, and that the submission from Barley Fields and that from Burnet's Lane Residents Association has been circulated long before this meeting to all the councillors so that they could actually read it. So just wanted to make that clear. We have read all your points. Certainly it is my understanding that Burnet's Lane southwards is going to be closed, but we will of course check that. We know that it's going to be open for pedestrians and open for biking, but it was my understanding that it would be closed to traffic. So that's certainly something that we will put on our list to raise with the One Horton team when we submit our feelings about the whole scheme. So there are 2 parts to this application. The first one, of course, is land west of Burnet's Lane. It's land at Burnet's Lane, Fir Tree Lane and Allington Lane. So it's the whole site, the whole planning site. It's a general principle. And so we need to take these two separately. Now, the land at Burnet's Lane, Furtree and Allington is phased mixed-use development with up to 2,500 residential units. Now, Colin has reminded me, and thank you again, Colin, for this, that we don't have up-to-date figures on what our housing requirements are for the borough, and that this started off as a very small development and seems to have grown a bit like Topsy, and now with no secondary school is probably going to have even more houses on it, up to 2,500. And it would seem to me that we need to be assured that this is the number of houses that are required in the length of our plan and beyond, possibly, and that the mix of housing that is going in here is appropriate for the demographic that they think might be moving into them. So I would want to say that as part of this application. So I'm going to open this now to councillors. We are not talking about Lower Acre. That's the detailed planning application that we have in front of us. This is the whole general concept, remembering, of course, that it does already have planning permission on it. And I think Linda is sharing her screen with us, and she's going to show us a site plan, I suspect, the master plan. Just so that everyone is fully aware of what we're looking at. It's a very big document. It's taking quite a long time to load, I think. And it seems to have frozen.
Perhaps, Chairman, if you put it out to comments whilst the document loads.
I think that's fine, but of course I can't see who wants to make a comment. Oh, this is the wrong application. This is the application off Knoll Lane. So if we could have the main application. So I can't see who wants to say anything while Linda is sharing her screen. So can you, Mel, or not? You're on mute as well, Mel.
If members wish to speak, if they could put it in the chat or raise their hand, and then I'll let the chairman know.
Lovely, thank you. So this is about the whole general concept, bearing in mind there is already planning permission on this site. What are we going to say? Are we going to suggest things about it, or what are your feelings? Who would like to start?
We haven't had any members raise their hands yet, Chairman.
No.
Councillor Couldry would like to speak, Chairman. You have to unmute yourself, Councillor Couldry.
If we can just remember, Councillor Couldry has an interest in this.
Well, thank you. I have an interest, but it's not a pecuniary interest, it's not a personal interest. The point that has been raised about the number of housing is a very pertinent one, and one to which we haven't yet got an answer. But can I just point out that the housing supply goes up and down. Builders build housing when they're getting a good price for it. They fall back when they're not. So the last 3 years, we've had very good house building figures, or a lot of house building. Previously, we didn't have enough house building, and then the planning inspector came in and made us give permission to 2 sites in Fair Oak where we didn't want to give them permission. So, you know, but the good thing about having some control on the building of it is that we can tweak the rate at which houses are built at Horton Heath so as not to go ahead of the numbers that we need, and top them up if private enterprise is not building enough, and cut back if they're building too many. And I would suggest that that's something that we should ask for in our submission.
Thank you very much. That seems an extremely sensible point, leading on from an up-to-date housing figure. Thank you. Anybody else want to speak, Mel?
Councillor Bird.
And Councillor McGuinness is next, Chairman.
So shall I come in?
Yes, please do, Councillor Bird. You seem to be on mute, though.
Here we go. The
Thank you.
space bar on mute didn't work there. As it would appear from the master plan that the total number of houses is based on what the site can accommodate rather than what is actually needed.
Thank you. Anything else to add to that?
No, page 72, if anybody wants to have a look.
Yes, thank you. It is very helpful to have the page numbers and references so that we can check what we're saying. Anybody else want to say anything, please, before we make a decision about this? Mel, can you see anybody else?
Councillor McGuinness.
Councillor McGuinness, over to you, please.
Yeah, it wasn't the number of houses I wanted to mention, but the overall plan. I was concerned about cycleways and access on the edge of the site, namely at the roundabouts and things. How do the cyclists have to go round the roundabout, in other words, or are cycleway provisions being made at the roundabouts?
I don't know the answer to that question. I know that there's huge cycleway provision through the site to make it very safe, and they're not cycle lanes that are joined onto the highway either. They're separate cycle lanes. Some are dedicated, some are shared, and that there are easy links to get through from one side of the site to the other, and so on. But I don't know the detail of the roundabout. And of course, that roundabout is going to be constructed fairly soon. So we can certainly ask that question. Anybody else want to say anything, please?
Sorry, may I just say something on top of that?
Yes.
In particular, the roundabout at the southern edge, namely on Burnett's Lane, it's very close to the railway station at Hedge End. In other words, one could cycle to the railway station with ease.
That's right. And there is going to be a cycleway and easy walkway straight to Hedge End station, because we weren't allowed to reopen the Victualling Depot station because there is actually one there, well, the remnants of one, but Network Rail wouldn't have that. So there is going to be a very easy link straight to Hedge End station. Anybody else want to say anything?
Councillor Speary's raised his hand, Chairman.
Councillor Speary.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry to go back to this whole numbers thing. I'm concerned with where we're going with this, or where we're not going with it. You can slow development down, or you can speed it up. But if you're trying to give permission, if you're going to give permission for the full 2,500 houses, that's what we'll finish up in the end. It may take longer, or it may take shorter, but that's still the figure. And I still think we ought to be asking the question fairly firmly now: what do you really think this development actually needs from the Borough Council's point of view? That I still think that issue needs to be pressed. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Any other points on this particular application? Okay, so it seems to me then that we are supporting the application only if we have some following reassurance or conditions added to it. And one of those is an up-to-date assessment of the amount of houses that we need and some justification for those. And we want to know more about cycleways where cycles go around roundabouts. But otherwise, we are happy with the rest of the application, the amount of playing field space and so on that is going to go there. So this is outline only.
Chairman, Councillor Bird has raised his hand.
Councillor Bird?
Can I just point out that we did ask for clarification about the junction with Allington Lane, and well, it's actually both Fair Oak Road and Eastleigh Road. It's a kind of triple junction. They did not reply to that.
Thank you. There are some other things which we need to add to it, that junction being one of them, but we also want to be assured about traffic going in and out of this development. So we want to know, again, in detail about the traffic improvements. And you're quite right, we hadn't had a reply to that one, and we've had some wishy-washy replies to some of the others. And I think really that now this plan is beginning to come to fruition, we need to have some concrete examples of exactly what is going to happen to the traffic flows, particularly when it hits Burnet's Lane and Botley Road and the Botley Road Winchester Road intersection with the traffic lights at Stubbington and all the way down to Eastleigh. So certainly we want some concrete clarification really of that, because at the moment I think it's being thought about and we want a little bit more than that. Councillor Marsh?
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. I just wanted to ask, firstly, I wanted to say thank you to the public participants for coming on tonight and voicing your concerns and raising the issues with us. But I wanted to know from Councillor Douglas whether we could, as part of our reply to the Borough Council, could include concerns raised particularly by Barley Fields, because I know that every forum we've been in where they've discussed it, so much consideration has been given to making sure that the Burnet's Lane residents are happy and satisfied with things, but not one conversation has been had about Barley Fields. So I think that as Parish Council, I'm almost horrified, having been in the forums for a year, that no consideration was given to Barley Fields. I absolutely think we should make representation for them.
And we will do, but we're going to look at that in the second application that we've got, because it kind of leads on from Lower Acre. So, Mr. Eber, I haven't dismissed you at all. We're going to come back to all of the concerns that you had when we discuss things in a little bit more detail with the second application. I know you're not part of that second application exactly at the moment, but I think you're going to be the next bit that comes on. So we will be dealing with that. Definitely. Thank you, Councillor Marsh. Anybody else want to say anything? So we've got comments at the moment on this application. Our comments are: we want to know about housing, we want to know up-to-date numbers, we want to know the total capacity of this site now that there's no secondary school going on it. Up to 2,500 is not an accurate enough figure for us. We want to know about the junctions, improvements down to Eastleigh and beyond. And we want to know about cycles and where they have to go around roundabouts, how that particular issue is being dealt with. Anything else? Right, so those are the comments then from Fair Oak and Horton Heath Parish Council on the application as a whole. And now we want to move on to the land west of Burnet's Lane, and we're going to include in that Barley Fields. And so this is where we need to take note, particularly of Burnet's Lane's Residents Association, what they've said, and also the Barley Fields Association. Now, there were some key points that were made in those presentations from those two gentlemen and in the paperwork that they've sent us. So one of them was traffic and junction and what's happening there. And so we need to include that in any comments that we make about this. We want to know about how the junctions will work and how they will be improved for the traffic flow into Eastleigh, northwards to Winchester, and in other directions from the site. There were also concerns from Burnet's Lane Residents Association about pollution, air pollution. So we want to have a little bit more detail on that. There was also concerns about flooding and water flooding. I know that's something that Mr. Holmes, our MP, is discussing as well. We don't have the expertise for that. We've read the reports and we have to believe what's said, but nevertheless, it is a concern and we don't actually live close to that flooding issue. So we want that to be raised again. There are other issues from Burnet's Lane. One is the density of the housing. One of the parking issues, we've had a response on parking saying that predominantly the parking is going to be unassigned parking because then it is used much better. And I think the average is 1.97 spaces per house. So we have had a detailed answer about parking. House styles was another issue because we've been very keen all the way through this to make sure that we don't have another Hedge End. No disrespect to people who live in Hedge End, but the houses are all very similar, and we wanted something that had a different feel, a different street scene, something that was exciting and interesting to look at. So we need to reiterate that point once again, even though I'm convinced that we are going to have variety in housing. I think it's a point that we need to make. So what else do we need to think about? Well, we need to think about Barley Fields, and we have no right to a view. And Barley Fields absolutely understand that. And they bought those houses knowing full well that they had small gardens and that in the end, there probably would be building. But that doesn't mean the building has to come right up to the end of their garden. And I can't see any reason at all why we can't accommodate better landscaping there to hide the development from them, to give them a better visual amenity, and also to ask that any houses that go there don't tower over them. 2.5 stories, perhaps even just 2 stories is sensible to have in that site. And I would like to put those views very firmly to the One Horton team. In fact, I will be at our next meeting, as I'm sure others will be, because they do have a right to privacy, not a right to a view, but a right to privacy. And I think that's really important. So another issue, and actually I haven't found one person apart from the One Horton team who like the landmark building on the roundabout in Burnet's Lane. And members of the parish council will know that I'm a frustrated historian and very keen on architecture and style of things, and I can see nothing to merit this building in the situation that it is in. In the middle of Eastleigh, it would look wow. Stuck on the edge of this development, it just looks ghastly. And I have to say, I support every resident that has said this is inappropriate there. I've sat at meetings where I've been told, and you're right, it was dropped in pretty much at the last minute, this big landmark building. I can't believe that it was such a last minute thing. However, we've been assured that it's not going to be visible from all over the borough of Eastleigh, even though it's going to be 6 stories high because the land drops away. But nevertheless, it is unlike anything else that we have. I like the idea of a feature building, a landmark building that says, look, here I am. This is One Horton. This is amazing. This is a development that is far superior to every other. But it doesn't have to be 6 stories in order to have that statement. And I feel very strongly that this is the wrong building in the wrong place, and that we need to make that very clear in any representation that we give. So I'm going to pass this over now to members of the council who might agree with me, who might disagree with me, and we're then going to come up with comments that we can submit to the Borough Council about the 393 units that are planned in this Lower Acre part. So who would like to speak? I can see people now. So, right, Councillor Scott, over to you. You're on mute though.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, taking up your last point about this landmark building, I think this is probably just a planning dolly. They know that we're going to object to it, so they're giving us something we can knock back. So we feel more inclined to accept some of the other things that we might not be happy with. It's ugly. It's got no business being up there. Why would you make it 6-story? It's ridiculous. If you want to make a landmark building, you want to make a statement, then do it with the materials. You could build it out of stone. You could build it out of brick. You can make it look beautiful. This is not the way to go. So that's my first point. The other point I would agree with what I was reading earlier about the bollarding, the access down to Blind Lane particularly. That could be bollarded. I think we could do with some sensible and serious traffic restrictions along Burnet's Lane. For the moment, that's all I need to say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have been assured that Burnet's Lane will be calmed. We're not quite sure how that's going to work yet, but we have been assured that that is the case. And again, we need to make sure in our comments that that is something that happens. Right. Other councillors, please. Councillor Speary.
Thank you, Chairman. Back on numbers again, I have to say I was stunned by the density that's being proposed for this section of the housing. It seems to me, obviously, clearly it's a rural site at the moment. That's going to be an urban site very shortly. I simply think that the amount of housing they're trying to put into this site is too much and should be looked again at the design. I mean, I realise the commercial problems of all this and how everybody's going to make a bit of a profit, but it seems to me to squeeze them in on this site in Horton Heath is simply too much and should be reduced. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. That's another comment that we can make. Other comments from councillors? Councillor McGuinness?
Yeah, going back to this so-called gateway building, I think it's a monstrosity. It's also, as far as I can make out, at the highest point on this particular area that's being developed. So to say it won't be visible, I think is baloney. And if I were approaching it, thinking of going to live on that site, the moment I saw that building, I'd carry on round the roundabout and go back where I came from. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments, please.
Chairman, Councillor Higby has her hand raised.
Thank you, Councillor Higby.
Thank you, Chairman. It's about the landmark building again, and I've done a little bit of research on other developments that are a bit further afield, and there doesn't appear to be the same sort of large gateway, I suppose, to developments. And thinking about where it's going to be, I think it's just going to look awful, and I'm really against it. And I agree with everything that other people have said about it. I don't like it at all. I don't think it will add value. And it will probably look just quite ghastly, I think, from looking at the plans.
Thank you. Any other comments about this application at all? Right, so I think that we're going to make comments about this application then, aren't we? So I hope that either Linda or Mel will correct me if I miss anything out. So we're going to say that the 6-story building is ghastly and we don't want it there. It's inappropriate in its siting and its visual amenity. We want to question the density of the housing on this site. Is it too dense for that particular area? We want to mention drainage and flooding. We want to talk particularly about Barley Fields, even though it's not part of this at the moment, but we want to talk about their visual amenity and their privacy and the height of houses that will be backing onto them, or maybe not even backing at different angles to them so that it isn't window to window, because that's been accommodated for people in Burnet's Lane, and I don't see why it should be any different for people in Barley Fields at all. What else were we going to comment on? Linda or Mel, can you help me out, please?
Yes, Chairman, you've mentioned reassurances about the traffic calming on Burnet's Lane,
yes,
as well as the house style and retaining character and variety of housing styles.
Lovely, thank you.
As well as the junction and traffic flow as well.
Thank you. Now, is there anything else that we need to add? I'm going to take the unusual step of asking Morgan from Barleyfields to say, is there anything that you think we have missed that relates to your particular worries?
I think probably just the fact that we are the only houses that do directly go onto the back of this development. So for such a large development, we do feel that we should have some form of extra consideration, and that we should have a sympathetic outcome to it, because the feeling we got when we spoke to David Cramner earlier was it's going to be like it or lump it, and we're going to get houses as close as we can to you.
Well, I would be very surprised if that was Mr. Cramner's intention. However, we will, on your behalf, also put pressure for there to be some mitigation for you, because we understand that you're in a almost a unique position there. Thank you. Mr. Hubbard, anything else from Burnet's Lane that we need to add?
No, I don't think so. I think you've covered everything. I'm quite happy with the comments that you wish to make.
Lovely, thank you. So, Parish Council, I think that's the comments that we're going to make on this application. One last check that nobody wants to add anything else.
Councillor Scott has raised his hand, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Scott.
Are we objecting, Chairman?
We're making comments, I think. I think we could object to the landmark building. I think that could be a very clear objection, because there's some very strong views about that. But I think the other things need to be comments. I don't think we've got enough to object about, but we're going to object about that building because of its siting, its height, its appropriateness, etc.
Okay.
Is that all right with the rest of the council, however, to take that stance? Yes, I can see lots of nodding heads. I can't see anyone saying no to me. Okay.
Chairman, Councillor Mignott has raised his hand.
Thank you, Councillor Mignott.
Hello, thank you. I just wanted to vote, that's all. Sorry about that.
Oh, right, you want to vote. We can have a vote. Right, our first vote then will, well, I think our entire vote will be an objection to the landmark building and to put forward the comments that we've already listed. So that's my proposal. Is there a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Anderson. And all in favour? And I can only see one screen, so I can't see if everybody is in favour, but Mel will be able to.
Yes, we are, Chairman.
Like we are, yes. Thank you very much, everybody. That's been a really lengthy but helpful discussion, and one of many that we're going to have. And Burnet's Lane and Barleyfields, thank you very much for taking part today. That's been really helpful. And we will keep you in touch with anything that we hear. Even if you hear it as well, we'll still let you know. So I'll ask Linda, who is our planning officer, to make sure that you're always updated in what happens. And if there's anything you want to say to us about anything, please do get in touch. So you're very welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but we absolutely understand if you want to go now. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Helen.
Thank you. Michelle, if you could ask Gemma to rejoin us, please, that would be helpful. And we'll move on to item 3A. Is she back with us? Because I can't see her.
Yes, she's joined the meeting.
Apologies then if anyone was watching, wondering what on earth was going on.
Yes, hi, I'm back.
Thank you. So our third application is land to the east of Knoll Lane. And this is an application which has raised quite a lot of interest. For those of you who don't know it, it's next to Constance Gardens, Constance Close. Can't remember the exact end of that road, but it's at the entrance to the Sky BSB Centre. That's where it is. Now there's one building that is already standing there, which I presume is Block A, which is not on the plans that we have been submitted. And I think the application is to change permission that is for blocks B, C and D and E to housing and flats instead of offices. So Block A is already there, it's already built, but it doesn't show on your plan. And the others are exactly the same, but instead of having offices in them, they're going to have 24 one-bedroom flats and 24 two-bedroom flats. They're on land that drops away, so they're not a huge visual impact in Knoll Lane. And at the bottom, there's going to be access to a 2 acre site, a sink, limited access with a pond. So comments on this application, please, from anybody. What do we think about it?
Councillor Speary has raised his hand, Chairman.
Councillor Speary.
Thank you, Chairman. This is obviously a significant urbanisation of this end of Knoll Lane and would be of some concern. Particularly from the traffic point of view. I know we're always talking about traffic, but we're talking about a small area of lane which is not very pedestrian friendly, certainly at the moment, and I think needs to be looked at as regards to pedestrianisation of at least a pavement going along there, which I don't think exists at the moment. I'm also concerned, and there's limited we can do about this, that there will be a leakage of traffic which going down Knoll Lane, although it's not supposed to, going south down Knoll Lane. That is bound to increase with the number of people and traffic that's going to use this new development. And so overall, I think there's definitely a traffic issue. At the very least, I think we need to address, or the planners need to address, the condition of that length of road, and also look at the future of southern movements down Knoll Lane, which I fear will slowly increase, maybe even rapidly increase. So I think the battle is lost to keep Knoll Lane as a rural area, as we all knew it. We've been here a while, and I'm not sure that this number of people and these flats are the most appropriate development for Knoll Lane, particularly with its restrictions that it is at the moment. So I think we should object to this application on the grounds of an overdevelopment, inappropriate development, and concern about the condition of the road. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any other comments on this application? Thank you, Councillor Forfer.
Just carrying on from what Councillor Speary said, I think parking again would be an issue. If you've got 50 odd flats, you could have maybe 2 cars per flat. You can end up with 100 cars that need parking. So I think that would be a major issue.
Indeed, the plan doesn't show anything like 100 car parking spaces either.
No. And also visitors as well, weekend visitors. You could have 150 cars there before you know it. So I think that would be a major problem.
Absolutely, and that could lead on to a problem with our site, which is almost opposite, with other people parking in it to visit this site or parking on other roads that have been built around it. I think that could be an issue. I almost feel, because these buildings have already got permission to be offices, but I almost feel that this is housing by default, isn't it? It's a sort of back way into building flats there, and I'm not convinced that flats are appropriate in that location anyway, on a soft edge to the village. Anybody else want to make a comment about it?
Councillor Bird has raised his hand, Chairman.
Councillor Bird?
Oh, just pop in a positive comment without disagreeing with anything that's been said beforehand. But the proposal for enhancing the sink, in other words, the pond, is actually quite encouraging.
Yes, I agree to provide some public access into there. That would be very nice. I have some questions about that. I'd want to know what the intention is to happen to this sink. I don't want it to come to the parish council without us being consulted, should this application go through. And currently that site has got locked password protected gates to it. And is it going to be completely public access, or is it just for the people in those flats? So I had a few issues around that one as well. Other comments, please. Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, just in support of what Councillor Speary said, totally inappropriate. And I'm always worried about areas of water as well, which might be part of it. I've only 2 words to say about this planned application: till it. And that's how I feel about it. I mean, I think we should be really quite resolute in our opposition to this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Scott. You're on mute, Councillor Scott.
Again. Yeah, I think it's going to be difficult. Anybody living in there has got those huge, great satellite dishes to look out on. And I just wonder if there is any sort of scientific problem with having those alongside a residential unit. I agree with what you're saying about the sink. The traffic, they say, the applicant, they said there's going to be fewer traffic movements if it goes residential. Obviously, they're going for residential. I think they always intended to, but no doubt they've not been very successful with letting the office units. I don't like it. I didn't like it in the first place, and yeah, I'd be happy to object to it.
It is a scheme that we objected to right at the beginning and said that we don't need offices there and it's the wrong site. And lo and behold, plainly they can't let them. I don't think there are any that are let there at the moment. The whole place is just closed up. So, yeah. Well, it would seem to me that we're fairly certain that we want to oppose this. Is there anyone who would disagree with that?
Councillor Higby has her hand raised.
Oh, Councillor Higby.
I don't want to disagree with anything that anybody said. The issues are around the traffic. Knoll Lane is dangerous to walk along, and it's not got the provision for anybody to walk safely. It's very dark and bendy at times. Car parking, a number of cars is an issue. The massive great things, the sky, there is an element of radiation from those. I'm assuming that there'd be some surveys or some research done into that, but that, you know, it could not be suitable for housing, maybe offices but not housing, and we've already defined offices. So that's just my comments.
Thank you. Councillor Marsh.
I'm sorry, it's just to say that I've realised that if this is called in as a borough councillor, I'd have an interest in this, so I will abstain from any vote to do with this.
Thank you. And Councillor Caldry, thank you. So does anyone disagree with us objecting very, very strongly to this plan? Then we will object. Linda, can you list the reasons that we gave, please, as our objection, and in the strongest possible terms that we think this is totally unsuitable? Thank you. Right, let's move on to item 4 then. Joe, report of the financial officer. We've all had your report, thank you. And are there any questions for Joe? No, Joe, is there anything you want to add first of all?
No, there's nothing above that summary really that needs to be mentioned. So I'm happy for any questions from members.
Thank you. Questions for Joe about the finance report, please? No, we all seem to be happy then. So if we could approve that report that we've already had and the BACS payments. Is there a proposer, please? Councillor Speary, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Marsh. All in favour? And we are. Thank you very much. Thank you, Joe. If you'd like to leave the meeting now, Joe, please feel free to. Item 5 then, the library. If you remember, we discussed the library at our last meeting and we gave a very firm steer on the direction of travel that we wanted this to go in as a community building. Since then, we've had a parish poll and we had 91% of people who answered it said that they would like it to be a community hub stroke library. 642 people, I think, answered this questionnaire. So it was quite a significant number of people, which is really good. We've got quite a firm yes from some of our parish, which is good. So Mel, would you like to update us, please, on any of this since the report?
Thank you, Chairman. Since the last meeting, I've obviously been in contact with the Parish Council's solicitor regarding the heads of terms that Hampshire County Council submitted to us. We had seen them before at our January meeting and had commented that they were rather, for want of a better word, skeletal. So our solicitor contacted the legal department at Hampshire County Council, raised concerns about that and worries about future covenants, etc. Unfortunately, we haven't heard back from Hampshire County Council's legal team. Therefore, our solicitor has said he would strongly advise us that if we want to agree the transfer in principle, subject to a much more robust heads of terms, perhaps the council would be minded to delegate myself in consultation with you, Chairman, negotiation of that heads of terms, just to make sure that the parish council isn't binded to something that would restrict us in its future use should the community library fail. Thank you, Chairman. I don't have anything else to say. I'm happy to take questions.
Councillor Caldry.
I'm sorry that it takes a long time to unmute for some reason.
Okay.
Yes, first of all, can I just point out, start not by saying I've got a conflict of interest, because I don't think it is technically, but I am a trustee of the charity set up to run the community library when it starts. So there's that. The other thing that I see in the report is that there is a very substantial amount of work to be done to the library to get it up into a condition in which it needs to be in order to function well as a community hub and a library. And that will require A, some money, and B, quite a lot of time. So the community library obviously is not going to dictate the timing, because the job is the parish council's position, and it is the building. The community library just wants a license to use it as the library, and it can accommodate perfectly well either you're deciding to deal with it now or to deal with it later, deal with the improvements later. It just simply wants to know as fast as as soon as you can, what the position is so that it can respond appropriately. And I think that's all I need to say at this point.
Thank you. I know that one of the issues that we debated at our last meeting was the amount of money that it might cost us to bring this building up to scratch. Once it's up to scratch, then its running costs, I think, will be minimal, but we did have some concerns about things. Are there any updates, Councillor Caldry, about fundraising?
Yeah. Well, not so much about fundraising, although it is in the broader sense fundraising, but as everybody knows, when a developer gets planning permission, they have to make contributions, and the local area committee has been looking through the contributions that have been made that need to be distributed. They're going through this informally on Wednesday and formally in March. There is money there which could be passed to the parish for this purpose, and I will be proposing that. Whether I get it through or not is a different matter, but certainly I would be disappointed if I didn't get somewhere. So I think that, although it can't be, your taking on the building can't be conditional on the local area committee giving you some money, it is a community building that needs community money, and that seems to me a perfectly good way of using for contributions.
Thank you. Does any councillor have anything to say that isn't covered by the report we've had? Councillor Bird?
Get the impression from the heads of terms that there is an interim period when the building is still under Hampshire County Council's control whilst they're interacting with the charity. how long is that period of time expected to be?
Mel, piece of string, is it?
It is really, Chairman. It all depends on Hampshire County Council's legal department and how quickly they can sort out the legalities of the heads of terms and the transfer. So it could take anything from 3 to 6 months to a year. Who knows? So the proposal is that Hampshire County Council will have a tenancy at will for the community library, the CIO, and that will be in the interim period. It's then for the parish council, if they do determine to accept the freehold transfer, the parish council will then need to think about the license to occupy between the parish council and the CIO itself. When we get to that point, or prior to that point, I would suggest that a small working party of members get together, perhaps to discuss that and possibly discuss the extent of the building renovations that the parish council is minded to make, and obviously the timings for that as well.
Am I right that during that interim period the CIO is in occupation?
The CIO would be in occupation,
Okay.
or I would hope to be in occupation following the decommissioning of the library. So that is week commencing the 2nd of March, I think it is. And then they will be in operation swiftly after that point via the tenancy at will.
I have a what if question then. Let's suppose that the interim period drags on, and during that period the CIO discovers that actually it doesn't have a viable proposition. Where are we then?
Then we are left with a building, and we will need to determine what we do with that building. And this is where the heads of terms is really important, that we actually get to grips with the detail of that, because obviously the principal authority, HCC, could tightly bind us and restrict us as to what we do to that building. So I would hope that HCC sticks to its word, and that they won't restrict us too tightly, i.e. that as long as the building is used for community use, we could put a number of things in that building. Obviously, bearing in mind that the building does need work to it, particularly that roof. So it's heartening to hear that Councillor Couldry could possibly find us some money, depending on the other members of the local area committee agreeing to that. Whether that money will be enough, I don't know. Again, it probably is for the parish council to again consider later down the line what exactly it would like to do in terms of that building.
Mel, can you just remind us how much the costs are to bring this building up to date, please?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I mean, it really depends on how much work you want doing to the building. I have been in contact with chartered surveyors, and they've suggested that they undertake a feasibility study, because obviously we've got there with planning considerations, etc., to think about. You would have to factor in the cost of the roof, solar panels if that's what you wanted to put in. If you wanted skylights of new efficient lighting, blocking up the old metal crystal windows, which are obviously don't offer any sort of thermal value. There's leakages in the toilet, and the kitchenette obviously needs refurbishing. There's an internal rejig and new flooring. I did submit a capital works grant application to Hampshire County Council for a number of those items, and it came to over £12,000, but that did not include the replacement of the roof.
Councillor Couldry, would you give us any indication of how much money could, should the local area committee agree, head our way to help this?
I think that we were talking about 30.
£30,000. Thank you. That goes a very long way towards sorting those problems. Councillor
Well,
Scott.
that's the idea.
Yes. Councillor Scott, you're holding a letter which we can't read. And you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, again. Yeah, it's going to be £30,000. The roof is, I went over the building, couldn't go inside it, obviously, because access was denied. But I went up on the roof, and I can tell you that roof's been patched a few times. It's probably got about another 5 years in it at most. I also checked the insulation in the roof, and there isn't any. I don't think there's any insulation in the walls. I did some costings, and yeah, it's going to be about somewhere around £30,000. So I'd like to hold Councillor Coldry's feet to the fire, and also Michelle as well, and say, can we ensure that this is going to get a priority when it comes to developer contributions? Thanks,
Councillor Marsh.
Okay, I can't guarantee it because we've got to see what the whole committee says, but certainly this will have my vote because we've done an awful lot to support Bishopstoke with the memorial and other buildings that we've made sure are suitable and available for community use, because we believe passionately in community use. And I think that the fact that Hampshire County Council, I attended all the consultations at the library and got to meet so many of the people who were desperate to keep this facility open and available, particularly the older people in our community who feel strongly that this is their one social point. They're not able to drive into Eastleigh and would struggle to carry books back. The library is a lifeline for these people. So I do feel it was a travesty that it was going to be closed down by Hampshire County Council. And I think this parish council, borough council, need to do everything we can to fight to keep this going. And I certainly would be making a request that those that funding gets used for this purpose. But I would hope that if that wasn't enough, whether it be that we set up just giving pages and get community donations toward this or look at lottery funding, I think that it would be a real mistake if this parish council allows that building to go to any other purpose. We need to protect that for the use of our community.
Thank you, Mel. Am I right in saying that in our wish list for developers' contributions, we have got a line that says the library, so we can expect some contributions in future years from developer contributions, can't we?
We have, Chairman, and the community investment programme, that's the list you're referring to, it's not set in stone, it's updated regularly, and I regularly attend the local area committee briefing meetings where we pitch for priority projects, and the local area committee are generally very supportive of the projects that we put forward.
Thank you. And thank you very much, Councillor Scott, for going to look at the building, because you did promise you would at the last meeting, and that's really helpful to have had a building person look at it for us. Thank you. Any other comments anyone wants to make? Councillor Speary?
Is there any update on the potential grants from Hampshire County Council? And if there was, does that go to the CIO?
So thanks, Councillor Speary. There are two grant applications have been submitted to Hampshire County Council. One on behalf of the CIO for the community library and its setup, which Councillor Coldry has submitted on behalf of the CIO, and a second grant application for capital grant building works, building improvements. And I submitted that to the county on behalf of the parish council. Both of those grant pots go up to £10,000. Whether the county will actually approve both grant applications up to that amount is another matter. We're told that they will consider that in March.
Thank you. Martin, you wanted to add something. Martin, for the benefit of people watching, is our operations manager.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just one comment on the costings that are being bandied around here. I do actually think that the figures we're talking about aren't going to cover the full extent of the works that are being proposed. Every discussion that we're having seems more things are being found that that potentially are going to need work doing, and these all have figures attached to them, and some of them are quite considerable, especially with the windows and the replacement of the roof. I know that we have, or I've submitted one quotation from a contractor. I know Councillor Scott has as well, but these figures, like I said, I don't think quite are going to cover the full extent of proposed works.
Thank you. But of course, not all the works need to be done at once. So that is something we need to bear in mind. It could just be used right now without us doing anything to it. So it doesn't have to all be done at once, but it is a big decision. Anybody else want to say anything at all before we move to make a decision? No. Right. So we've got a report. We've asked lots of questions. I'm very much in favour of keeping this building as a community building, and I'm going to propose that we adopt the recommendations that are in the report. Do I have a seconder for this? Thank you, Councillor Scott. And all in favour, please. And those against? Thank you. Mel, I didn't count the numbers. I have a feeling that it was in favour. Could you or Linda confirm, please?
Yes, Chairman, their recommendations were carried.
Thank you very much. So, decision made. Thank you very much, everybody. That's a really big decision for this parish council. And actually, it's been a meeting of really big decisions, hasn't it, this evening? And here's another one, item 6 then, drainage works at Knoll Park. Martin, we've read your report. Is there anything you want to add to it, please?
I've got no further comment on that one, Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions for Martin about this? I have to say £20,000 seems such an incredibly large amount of money for drainage works, but then I suppose everything costs, doesn't it? Councillor Scott is on mute again.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is the jewel in our crown. It's the envy of every other part of the borough. Nobody's got what we've got. This is a brilliant facility. And people now more than ever need exercise, don't they, when they can't get out and about. That we cannot afford to let the standards drop here. It's fantastic. It's a fantastic thing. I'm very proud of it, and I'm sure the other councillors are as well. So I think we should keep it up to standard. And if it costs £20,000 for the works, then I say let's pay it.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Because Des has obviously made a proposal, but are there any more questions for Martin before we vote on this one? Councillor Anderson?
Yeah, can I just, well, basically thank the officers of the council for really getting up and running with this. We recently had an incident. We all know about this. We've all communicated over it. And it did seem to me when I spoke at the Asset Committee recently that we did need to do something about it. And the incident that occurred has merely made that, I think, much more important and necessary. So can I thank Mel and Martin and anyone else who had a hand in organising the report and getting on with this, because I think it's something we'll have responded to very quickly. And I think that's something that needs congratulations. So thank you very much.
Any more questions on that before we vote on it? So we're going to vote then to use...
Councillor Speary's raised his hand.
Councillor Speary, sorry, I didn't see you.
Quite okay. I just wondered whether we'd made any further contact with the victim of this poor accident that's caused all this extra expense. And I fully agree with the expenditure, but I just wondered if we'd made any contact with the victim and wished him well or whatever. Thank you, Chairman.
Mel, I did ask that question. How did we get on?
Chairman, I haven't heard directly from the resident who slipped on the ice on one of our pathways in the park. I haven't heard from them direct at all. I'm assuming that they're okay. I don't have any contact details for them. Obviously, for data protection, GDPR, the resident that was witness to the other resident slipping wasn't able to give me that information.
Thank you. Councillor Forfer.
On a personal capacity, I have actually spoken to the gentleman because I actually know him and often are out walking my dogs the same time as him. He seems totally fine now. So yeah, I bumped into him. He seemed, totally back to normal.
Thank you very much.
Quite big and hard about it.
Thank you very much. That's really heartening to hear, because it was the most horrible thing to happen. So just to be quite clear then, we are moving money from our general reserve fund to pay for this £20,000 of drainage works. I think that Des is proposing it, and I think Scott was seconding it. All in favour, please.
That's agreed, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Right, item 7 then, our CCTV and fire alarm system update. Again, we've had a report, that was report E in our pack of things, and this is just appointing a contractor. We've already agreed the budget for this, but the proposition is that we appoint JPS, who tendered successfully for this. Anything you want to add to it, Martin?
No, Chairman, just to say that we have used JPS before. They were a previous contractor prior to us awarding the contract for maintenance contract to Firecare. With the update of this, we'll more likely carry out another review of costings and get another load of figures from contractors for the ongoing maintenance of these systems.
Thank you. All right, so just to be clear then, that this is appointing JPS to install new CCTV at New Century Park and the Village Hall, Horton Heath Community Association, the Pavilion, and also new fire alarm systems at the Pavilion. Is there a proposer, please? Thank you, Councillor Marsh, seconded by Councillor Bird. Thank you. All in favour? And we are. Thank you very much. Item 8, noting our work programme. Is there anything anyone wants to say about this? No. Membership of committees then, please. We've got a current vacancy on our asset committee, and we need to appoint 2 members to our climate change task and finish group, which is being resurrected after a bit of a pause because of the pandemic and other things sort of taking precedence. So is anyone interested in joining us on the asset committee, please?
Councillor Mignott has his hand up, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would like to be considered.
Is there anybody else who would like to be on asset committee? No. You are the only person who would like to be on it, Councillor Mignott, so you are. Thank you very much for volunteering. And climate change task and finish group, 2 people. It's very short term. Michelle, I know this is one of your favourite topics. Would you be willing to join us?
On a short-term basis, I probably can. It just depends on the time commitment and whether it clashes with school and meetings. I've got to prioritise that at the moment. But
I'm sure it can be arranged around your meeting.
Wonderful. Yes, I'll join you on that.
Thank you. A willing volunteer is worth 1,000 that are pushed, as they say. Anybody else volunteering, please, for this? It's going to be a very small task and finish group then. Well, it might be that some councillors
will be short.
It might be that some councillors who can't be with us this evening might want to join it, or you might think about, oh, Councillor Forfer.
I was originally on it. Am I still on it? Okay. I can't join it again then.
No, that's why I didn't ask you again. Sorry, I should have said that. Anybody else? Climate change. Well, it's a start. It's a good start. So thank you. Please consider it. And if you would like to join, then please let the clerk know. So that's the end of our meeting this evening. If you've been a member of the public watching us, thank you very much for your time. You're very welcome to join us at any time, or if you want to speak at a meeting, just contact the clerk anytime up to an hour before the meeting, and you can join us and put your views about anything at all that you want to, that's relevant for this parish. So thank you very much, councillors and staff, for being with us this evening, and stay safe. And Mel, if you could stay on the call, I'll say good night to everybody else. Thank you and good night.